Hello there, and today we are checking out this synth stand here. It's pretty cool. I mean, what's not to like about this design here? It's like you're encircled by your synthesizers. It's like you're getting a warm, fuzzy hug by your analog synths, and what's not to like about that? This one is made by Black Panther. They emailed me asking if I wanted to check it out, and I was actually quite hesitant at first because, I didn't really need another synth stand and, didn't see what was so unique about it. But then they sent me this image here, and as you can see, it's pretty interesting. So I wanted to check it out, see what it's about, see if it's any good, and we're gonna talk about that today. And later in the video, I'll show you a more proper setup with everything like connected. But I want to start off by showing you the stand without any gear on it, because that will give you a better understanding of its modularity, the build quality, how everything is connected together. So let's do that. This here is a German-made synth stand, and just like with the Veridoc stands, those are the tabletop stands that I've showcased here on the channel before, it's all very nicely made. There's no sharp edges, everything fits very nicely together. It's also not very complicated to assemble, but it does take a little bit of time. It's also not something that you can fold up very easily, so if you need something for the road just to throw in the back of a van or something, this is probably not it. The version that I have here has 3 tiers and also a tray, so I could place, for example, effects or a mixer or something on top of this. And it has 2 additional arms on each side with these small trays. They also come in different sizes. Now the bottom tier can take a pretty heavy synth or keyboard, 20 to 30 kilos, and you can have an 88 key keyboard, no problem whatsoever. But of course, depending on how you have your arms set up, those can get in the way. And speaking of the arms, they are also, you can see here, we can move them like this because they're fastened to the main structure. So if I loosen stuff a bit, I could easily just pull them back. Now, it's not the largest keyboard stand out there, so if you just want like maximum amount of big synthesizers in a stand, then something like the Jaspers that I've showcased before is better. If I take the Matriarch and I put it here, it gives me a very nice angle to work with, not that difficult to play. Also, everything's accessible. You might not see it very well on the camera, but everything is accessible here. If I were to angle the 3rd tier up a bit more, then I would have even more access. I could have a larger synth here, but then I wouldn't have the 3rd tier at an angle. It would be more straight. So I think that for very large synths, like I wouldn't put like a Matrix Brute here. It's a pretty tall synthesizer, it's a pretty thick boy. I wouldn't put it in a stand like this perhaps. So if you have a ton of large synths and you just want a stand to sort of store them, then a Jaspers is better. But this one has some other things going for it that I will talk about later in the video when I show you my setup. So the 2nd and 3rd tier can take about 15 to 20 kilos. You can angle them and you can also height adjust them. Now the 3rd tier is the same as the 2nd tier, but I've mounted this large tray here so that I could, for example, put some effects on here. And there are these holes here for easy cable management. And I should note that there's also power outlets that are mounted on the back of the stand. Now, I wouldn't go putting anything too heavy on the sides here because I think that it could bend. But for a small mixer, for effects, for synths, for example, utility stuff, I think that this will work really well. And then we have the arms, and they can take about 10 kilos each. So you could have a drum machine here, for example, a sampler here, everything connected together. You could even put a laptop if you want to, work with a DAW. Of course, like I wouldn't recommend it as a replacement for a desk. If you're intending to do a lot of work from your computer, it will be quite tiring for your shoulders and neck and arms and sitting here like fiddling around with a computer. But for just like making music, especially if you have a MIDI keyboard or a controller for your DAW, I can see it being an amazing experience. Or if you're performing live, having a computer just for for the sound libraries, if you're not intending to like do a ton of editing, then I think that this is a pretty interesting solution as well. And in terms of assembling it, it wasn't that complicated. It's definitely a lot easier than a Jasper's. The main structure is basically a bunch of nuts and bolts that you just use to connect everything together. It's pretty quick to change the angle of a tier, but if you want to height adjust it, you basically have to remove 2 bolts. It's not like one of those X stands that you can just fold together very quickly and then just snap back into place. I have a 3-tier X stand, and while it's really quick to just fold and fold back out and travel with, it's also not very nice. It doesn't work with all synths, there's no modularity to it, so it's good for what it is, but it's definitely more limited. So here you can see a little bit more of a finished setup that I've been testing out. So we have the Polybrute here, the Pulsar, the Matriarch. We have the dust collector effects unit, the Minilogue, the original one, it's running through the dust collector. And then we have a big mixer with some effects that are set up as send effects. So I can basically route whatever synth I want through the effects. The brain for this DAW setup, we have machine over here. So that's controlling everything else. So here are some final thoughts. It's a well-built and sturdy stand. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can attach to it. So there's a mic attachment. You have these different trays. You can attach power on the back. You can attach rack, for example, beneath it. So you can rack mount something. You can rack mount something underneath here as well, I think. After using it to make some music, I can say that it's quite ergonomic. Now, you could, of course, replace this with maybe 3 tables in a U formation, and that would give you this sort of nice synthesizer hugging feel, but it's also a quite different kind of setup. It will take up a lot more space. And so far there's only 2 negatives that I can think of. The first one is that it's really not very portable, and secondly, I think that if you're looking for something to house your really big synths, then a Jasper's is a better buy, because this is, as you can see, more performance oriented, and I think that's where it shines. It feels very music front and center, very ergonomic, easy to reach things, easy to tweak synths. You have everything like very much in your face, at your fingertip, ready to use. And if that's something that you're looking for, then you could do worse than this stand for sure. And here's a teaser for some upcoming content. I'm probably gonna do a studio tour soon, because as you can see, the Jasper's is empty, and that is because I'm rebuilding again, changing things up. I want to make it even more practical and useful, and all that stuff. And it's also fun to just change up your studio. So let me know down in the comments if you want to see a studio tour video once it's all done. And as always, thank you for watching, and I leave you with some bleepity bloops.